Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of The Princess and the Human. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 32, Routine. Dawn had not yet come when Mahita left her bed. Donned the uniform, which had become like a second shawl to her, and made her way towards the Star Palace. Unlike the servants working in the Sun or Sky Palace, whose uniforms were predominantly blue, the color of the king, she was donning a predominantly green, as was the case for all the others working in the Star Palace. Not only was this symbolic of the fact that they directly served Her Highness, having the entire staff in the color of the princess also showed the changes in power dynamic. Ever since she had been given complete authority over Humnay's foreign affairs 3 cycles ago, a word of his or her majesty when it came to this topic. The estate housing for the servants was located on the back side of the palace. It was separate from the main building, but connected via a broad, canopied pathway. Said canopy was laced with a multitude of small, down-facing lights that currently illuminated the otherwise dark route. Despite the early hour, Mahita was far from the only one up. As soon as the head maid stepped through the servants' entrance, she was immediately greeted by familiar noises of the servants' daily business that the noble inhabitants of the palace never got to hear. After getting the report from the night shift, Mahita dismissed them before giving the morning shift their individual tasks. The first one, of course, was to clean the palace, a delicate job since it needed to be done thoroughly, so as to not embarrass Her Highness in front of her guests. Quickly, so they were done by the time everyone got up, and lastly, quietly, so as to not wake anyone up. The latter meant that they couldn't use most appliances since those made too much noise. That was not to say that they didn't have those too. They did. They just couldn't be used during the morning duties. And because of that, despite being a head maid, Mahita herself participated in this task as well. Joining the group that was tasked with the East Wing, she started to dust off the countless pieces of foreign art that decorated the hallways. Among them were paintings, sculptures, and statues from various otherworldly cultures that their planet had acquired, most of them being gifts from other members of the Alliance. As she passed the certain door, she halted for a moment. It was the door that led to Lady Nadine's chamber. Mahita couldn't help but wonder if the Adian noblewoman could truly hear them breathe through the door. Was there even a point in trying to be quiet? Then again, there was a difference between hearing something when it was quiet and waking up from something. She sighed as she kept looking at the door. 8 days had passed since she had seen it open for the last time. Normally, caring for Her Highness's guests was just another task, one of her many duties, nothing more. But with Lady Nadine, things had grown to be different. Since the first day, the young noblewoman had acted in a way that was completely different from what one would expect. In fact, until she learned the contrary, Mahita was convinced that she was a commoner. Since her arrival, she had treated the servants with respect, always asked, never ordered, struck conversations with them, and even went through the trouble of learning all of their names. Therefore, ever since the situation had become what it was, Mahita had wanted to help her, not just because she was ordered to or because it was expected of her, but because she, by now, actually found herself caring for her. But she didn't know how. After the cleaning was done, a quick glance at the chronometer told Mahita that there was only about 1 invalid left until the princess would wake up. So it was due time for her next task. Stepping into the office area, she linked her datapad to the central network and took a look at the messages that had come in during the night. As always, they mostly consisted of companies requesting certain resources or products to be added to existing trade agreements. Ever since Lady Keitler had arrived, most of the requests were about the topic of titanium and that Her Highness would try to make a new deal regarding the metal. With a sigh, Mahita quickly skimmed over everything, before sorting the messages so that Princess Uvadi would first see those that actually had some form of relevance. She encountered Her Highness on the way out, greeted her with a bow, and informed her that today Raikan would be the one tasked with her direct attendance. Her next destination was the kitchen, but before that, she took a short detour to Vashir's office to see if he needed help with anything. While the palace's steward hadn't put up any requests on the digital board, it wouldn't hurt to quickly ask him in person, just to make sure. Under Kaput's direction, the kitchen staff hurriedly prepared the food for the palace's employees, while the head chef himself was busy with the meals meant for the princess and her guests. Today, the schedule was completely reserved for the trade negotiations, meaning that he had to make both Taishtri and human meals. Grabbing what was meant for her, Mahita entered the adjacent break room to have a quick first meal. While she ate, she took advantage of the moment of quietness to make some estimations about the planning for the following days. Today was the 8th day of the ambassador's arrival and the 6th day of the negotiations. Under normal circumstances, she would predict the talks to continue for at least another 3 more days. Better assume 5 to be sure. But considering the difficulties they expected this time, Her Highness, Mahita, and Vashar had decided to plan for 15 days. Meaning by now, up to 9 were left. They had already prepared everything for that in time span, plus 4 days to buffer, save for some ingredients that couldn't be stored that long. Should it seem like things would take longer than that, they would need to rely on Her Highness to make that call. Stuff acquirable on Homne was no problem, but not everything was. At the current time cycle, it would take a far ship a bit over a day to reach the hyperlane entrance. There was a total of 3 other planets where they could purchase the stuff they might need, and they had according treaties in place. However, one of them was the Taistri's homeworld itself. A quick glance at a datapad proved her memory correct. They were too far from the entry point to be an option. Depending on which of the others they chose to jump, itself would take about 1 more day. Assuming the relays worked, they could then send a message to the planet. She again glanced at her datapad to look up the other planets' estimated positions. Depending on their choice, the cargo ship would either need 5 or 8 days to reach the hyperlane. 8 was too long, and Chrysanelv's planet was therefore out of the picture as well. 5 it was. 1 more for the jump back, and since the transport vessel was slower, 2 days to reach Homne. Typing the numbers in the calculator gave her a total of 10 days, and if they didn't want to do everything on the last day, the call for the new shipment had to come in 3 days if needed. It would probably be for the best to remind Her Highness of that. A heavy, salty smell pulled her out of her thoughts. By now, she would be able to recognize the fragrance of roasted meat, meaning that Kaput was now preparing the meal for Lady Nadine. When she'd seen the blood-smeared interior of the shuttle, Mahita couldn't understand how someone would deliberately eat something that gave off such a bad odor. Being a professional, she had obviously been able to suppress the urge to gag, but the smell was still hard to ignore. The cooked meat, however, she had to admit smelled at least peculiar. Nothing she would want to eat, but it resembled food much more than its origin did. She stood up and walked to the kitchen. Another maid, Kunde, was loading Nadine's first meal onto a tray when Dr. Cathay entered. A noble woman like her would usually never set foot in the kitchen, but right now, not much in the Star Palace could be called usual. Dr. Mahita greeted her with a quick bow. Here to accompany Kunde, I presume? No, of course. I still need to examine whether the change in diet has some notable effects on her. A short pause followed. You think she'll open today? The doctor's gaze fell. Probably not, but I'll keep trying. She nodded, not knowing what else to say. As they left, Mahita went over to the next tasks. Okay, Lexia and Onwell, you two take care of the meals for Her Highness and the ambassador. While they eat, I'll refill the drinks in the conference room. Nakai, still busy. Okay, then you take care of laundry, yes, sir. Forget the report for now. I'll do that myself, she sighed. First ones. We should have asked for more than just 2 additional servants. I can take care of the drinks if you want. Surprised by the new voice, Mahita turned around. In front of her, holding a water canteen and wearing a blue uniform rather than a green one, was one of the maids that had been called in from the Sun Palace. For some reason, there was something about her demeanor that didn't quite feel right to Mahita. Was she nervous? She couldn't be. Kyla, right? Why are you here? Weren't you supposed to attend Lady Kyla? I am. She sent me on an errand. Mahita crossed her arms. Then I'd say you should probably do that. She's busy talking to Her Highness right now. I have more than enough time to give you a hand. She turned to the door, but Mahita stopped her. I don't know if that is how things are done in the Sun Palace, but here we take tasks given to us seriously. Kyla scoffed at that. Too bad that the same can't be said about respecting your seniors. You might be older than me, but in the case you've forgotten, I'm still the head maid. A meaningless title given to a meaningless plebeian. I'll have you know that I carry the blood of the clan wrestler who ruled over one of the largest kingdoms before the Unification Wars and played a decisive role in it. Mahita's expression hardened. It was true that her being a headmaid was unusual, even amongst servants. The head of the staff was usually someone who was noble birth, at least in some way, but didn't have any real chances of succession. But that didn't mean that she didn't have a response to Kyla's insult. Yes, and who also birthed the infamous Duchess Merla. What, you thought I wouldn't look up the people who got sent you? Your family lost their title before you were even born. You were just as much commoner as I am. The entire kitchen had fallen silent while the two of them stared at each other. But the tension between them suddenly broke when Kyla took a step back and defensively raised her arms. Jeez, no need to get so agitated. She turned her back to them and placed the canteen back on the counter. I saw you were tight on time and I thought you'd appreciate some help. It was an offer. You don't have to take it. Later that day, Silvani was sitting at the desk in her bedroom, staring blankly. She had spaced out a little while, rubbing her forehead. Sis, her brother's voice shouted out on the datapad, pulling her into reality. Right now was a scheduled pause in today's talks, which she had decided to use to call her brother. Once she got transferred to Weimar, which was on the literal other side of the planet, calls like this would become difficult. I'm sorry. What were you saying? Is everything all right? Concern coming from her brother, the things she was allowed to witness. Yes, don't worry, just a little headache. That was the least part of it. There were a lot of things on her mind right now, but the headaches certainly didn't help. Is Nadine there today? Sorry, no. Oh, come on, is she that busy? That's not it, The princess took a deep breath. Ever since she came back, she has locked herself in her room and lets nobody in. Huh, why? She is scared. After what happened to you, she's afraid it'll happen again. That's bullshit. Silvani blinked. That's, what? Her word. Well, whatever. Let me just talk to her, he insisted. They've been trying for that for 8 days. She answered with a sigh. She doesn't even answer the door. Have you tried the window? Window? Yes, her window that's facing the garden. It's always open. That's how I usually get in. No, of course you do, she said sarcastically. Oh, shut up. You want to help her or not? Since when was her brother so assertive? I can't believe I'm actually doing this, Silvani murmured while shaking her head. Okay, I'm in the garden. What now? Go along the wall. Don't use the path. You have to walk on the grass. Make slow, long steps and make sure not to step on dry leaves. Once you're up past the orange LanScaper bush, hold your breath. Mess up any of those and she'll hear you coming. I'll mute the call until you're there. I can't believe I'm actually doing this, she repeated quietly. Avoiding the leaves wasn't too difficult. However, the distance between the bush and the window wasn't small. But for what could be the first time in her life, Silvani was thankful for her tall body, as her long legs allowed her to bridge the distance just before she ran out of air. Hey, she panted as she reached her destination. Immediately Nadine's head snapped in her direction. Not even a tag later, she was sitting on the opposite side of the room, her back pressing against the wall. Relax, I won't hurt you, she tried to calm her down. However, her joke didn't seem to be appreciated. You know what might happen, Nadine answered with a tired-sounding voice. Yes, it may happen that I molt a bit early. I'm close, remember? The small alien closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Please, leave. I will, Silvani affirmed with a nod, and then reached into the room and leaned her datapad against the wall under the window so the video call was visible. But he won't. As soon as she stepped away from the opening, she could hear some shuffling in the room. Kayatin! Oh my God! How are you? I'm so sorry. Are you all right? No, I am not, her brother's voice answered. I'm bored. I wanted to speak with you all the time. Why didn't you let anyone in? But what happened to you? Was an accident. And it only happened because I clung to you for multiple invers. Did you act as if I'd fall over dead just because you touch us once? It can still happen. I knew about the sweat, and my carelessness almost killed you. My strength is also... Well, then I guess you just have to stop being careless. Problem solved. I mean, be honest. How many people have you touched since you got here? There was that one time with Liza. And did anything happen to him? I think not. See, first ones. When did I become the voice of reason? Silvani scowled a bit at her brother's harsh tone. Then again, maybe that helped. In any case, she had to go back now, so she decided to leave the two alone. The sun had set, and the ambassador had left the palace when Silvani heard a knock on their door. It was Mahita, the Star Palace's head maid, who seemed happy for some reason. Did something good happen? Indeed, Your Highness, she answered and gave her a datapad. Said datapad had a video call on it showing the face of a certain alien. I must thank you, Your Highness. I'm also very sorry for last week. It's fine, Sugvani assured her, not asking what a week was. The important thing is that you're coming out again. Well, somewhat. This time, the small alien actually chuckled a bit. I just don't want to risk it, but I do agree that this can't go on. Therefore, I'd like to ask for a few things, but some of those things might get pricey. Money is not an issue. We have a budget reserved for guests, and I specifically asked you to request whatever you might need. Sugvani reminded her, gesturing for me to take notes. Go on. First, I'd like to resume and double my language lessons. Okay. A bit of slow start, but she said there would be multiple things, so whatever. Secondly, once I can read your letters, I want somebody who can teach me your programming language. With that one, Nadine had lost her, so Sugvani simply nodded. Nasty. I need to speak to the dressmaker ASAP. Sure, why not? What by the first ones was she planning now? End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, HenryTheRed, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.